the dark, I plant my dreams. Permaculture flows like sweet streams. I'm the daddy with the know-how seed. Creating the world like it's meant to be. Permaculture, P-I-M-P, I'm the king. That's love in everything. Bringing change, making it last. Join the permaculture.
Welcome to episode 338 of the Permaculture Pimpcast, where PIMP stands for Permaculture is my passion. The only Pimpcast on planet Earth where we discuss permaculture, preparedness, practical living, and sometimes prostitutes.
Permaculture, P-I-M-P, with soulful rays. In a Pimpcast where we find our place.
Oh, yeah. Glad to be with y'all this evening. This episode, as always, brought to you by Hickory Ridge Soap from TwoOldCrowsHomestead.com.
Turn that simp into a pimp.
Bam! Heaven's Harvest, 10% off with promo code PERMA. Yeah. Folks, this is, man, I'm going at 100 miles an hour this day. I'm just getting in this studio and just trying to get my head all worked out and squared away. I want to thank everybody for coming in tonight. Andy, George, Ladies Farm. Yeah, go check out their YouTube channel, y'all. They're doing really cool stuff over there. Shield Maiden for Christ. I love that name. Jen Sins, George, Colleen. Yeah. Anyway, if you're coming in right now, hit that thumbs up. Tell everybody we're live so they can go ahead and start suppressing because they don't want this out there. Especially, you know, I'm really shocked that the interview that I did yesterday with Logan actually saw the light of day because it's that kind of information that they really don't want on here. I kind of warned them ahead of time what not to say as far as some of the therapeutics that you can go out there and source for yourself. We've talked about them before, but now we can't talk about them because they'll go ahead and give us our third strike, and then we won't have a channel. So anyway, he did a masterful job of being able to talk in between the raindrops. Anyway, son, how you doing?
Pretty good. Hey, keep in mind that they might retroactively go back and give you guys a strike too, because it seems like there's a kind of a delay between like the upload and then the strike. I wonder if most of those strikes come from people like reporting it, not like the YouTube AI or anything like that. I wonder if somebody reports it.
Well, the last one, they actually give us the timestamp of where we supposedly committed the violation. And folks, it is just over the top, unbelievable what they are. If there's anything that legitimately helps out somebody, they're going to flag it. I mean, and that's why I used, I was speaking phonetically the other day when I talked about the Delta Mike Sierra Oscar. Yeah, you'll have to work that one out. But anyway, good to be here with all of y'all and a lot of crazy things going on in the world. But I'll start absolutely always with what's going on the farm. So, yeah, Michelle and I went out, and despite the mountain of stuff that we have in front of us right now, we had been trying to do this for the last, week and a half, maybe 2 weeks, since go out and pick some blueberries. Now, we produce them here, but we don't have nowhere near enough because we get enough for the whole year. And, of course, she has to factor in, she'll put them in a smoothie, Michelle will. And, I'm going to need blueberry pie from time to time. So we're going to need that. And then blueberries are just one of those things that, of course, it's a superfood with all those anthocyanins. It's blue, and it's also blackberry season. So, it's a good time to get some of those as well. So we went out to the one place we know that we can go there and get reliable stuff without worrying about whether or not they sprayed junk on them. So, it was where we did that jamboree last year. But anyway, went out there, went and picked about 3 gallons of them. And I think your mom is going to claim that she outpicked me, but people were over there talking to me and stuff. So I didn't quite.
Yeah. No. Hold on. Let's make that clear right now. Mom is the blueberry picking champ. She is the absolute champ. Dad is like, pick one, eat one, pick one, eat one.
Well, in this case, it was
there's no competition.
Oh, Bobby Spags in the house of Midwest Preparedness. Yeah, what's up? Yeah, they got an event coming up here before too long, so we'll need to get Bobby back on the show and talk about how that's going down, because that's one really cool get-together, folks. So go check them out as well. And Bobby's got he's also got a YouTube channel. But yeah, as far as the blueberries, man, I went out there as hungry as a runaway slave, and I'm out there picking. Normally, I don't eat anything until about noon anyway, but I don't know what got over me, man. I get out there, I'm a little bit hungry, and I'm thinking, okay, I know we're going to be here for a couple of hours. So we put everything on the back burner, despite the fact that I got, things that need done, and your mom has things that need done. We've got to get this blueberry thing done, because if we don't have blueberries for the year, if we don't get them now, then we are going to have problems. It's a staple thing for us. And I'm trying to figure out what I have to do to freeze dry them to, get them to my grandbaby. So, yeah, I think maybe you got to poke holes in every last one of them. Some people do
I
it.
don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think so. Oh, go ahead.
No, we've tried it before, and some of them will freeze dry and some of them won't. It's a mixed bag. So I know unless I macerate them and make like fruit roll-ups out of them, that's the only way I can figure out, maybe the best way of going about it. Because, well, William, you guys don't feed her any junk or no sugar or anything. I mean,
nope. And that's something I'm willing to fight about. Don't be giving my baby garbage. And I'm not saying you are, Dad. I'm not talking about that. I'm just people in general. Yeah. Don't give my baby garbage. Every time she has like processed sugar or wheat of any kind other than einkorn. Einkorn doesn't bother her at all. But anytime she has any processed sugar or wheat, then like an ear infection is around the corner or some sort of sickness is around the corner every single time.
Sounds like a correlation there. But yeah, so that's what I'm thinking about doing. Is maybe I was thinking about if I could macerate them somehow and make a bunch of fruit roll-ups and maybe freeze dry them. I don't know. I'm going to have to experiment with it, but I'm thinking some fruit roll-ups, but I'm thinking, well, how do I get them there and then for to be intact? I don't know. I mean, can't figure out how to put metal in a microwave, but I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to get this worked out. But anyway, I got to get a bunch more blueberries. And of course, it was cool to see Janet at Cloud9 Farm. So folks, if you're going to do any picking out there, go check out Cloud9 Farm. It is a really cool place. And like I said, they don't spray any junk on them. Yeah, and you shouldn't anyway. Blueberries, by and large, I mean, your only real concern with them is the birds, and they produce so many of them out there. So they, the birds take their share, just like we do here. And other things, I'm getting ready for my grandbaby. I'm probably going to have more peaches here in a couple of weeks. How's she doing with those freeze-dried peaches I sent?
She eats them in her yogurt every morning. She has typically her morning consists of like eggs, like Greek yogurt, or like that one what's it called? Like Icelandic yogurt or something like that. Yeah. Just plain yogurt. And then she's been eating some of that honey that you guys sent us home with, and then like fruit. So that could be at least lately it's been a lot of those freeze-dried peaches. She loves those. She loves fruit and meat.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Well, we speaking of honey, we went out there yesterday and we sweat buckets getting that honey. So we got a bunch of frames I still have to process. And of course, y'all, we don't treat our bees. We don't do anything to them. If they make it through the winter, they make it. If they don't, they don't. Now, we always leave plenty back for them to get through the winter, but we don't give them any mite treatment. We don't do anything else. The only thing that I did differently this time, I did put some pollen traps on there. So it was a little bit long in the tooth to be able to do that sort of thing, but I'm collecting my own bee pollen for my own medicinal use. And so that's one thing we did differently. Also, I'm reading this latest book on electroculture, and your mom came across this other thing where you put a copper wire in front of the entrance of every hive. And supposedly, I mean, we've never done that before, but that's another little experiment we're doing right now. So we're putting a copper wire where every bee has to cross that wire. Okay, you got that book right there. Yep, that's the one.
Yeah, Mom sent it to me. I've tried electroculture before, and the book that I had, or the test beds I had, one was just plain soil biology. The other one was electroculture. And according to this book, I did it incorrectly. I was getting the information from YouTube, and the electroculture bed did worse than the regular soil biology bed, but I haven't done it according to this book. So I'm looking forward to trying this.
Well, I suspect I know part of the reason why. It's funny you mention that, because out there at Cloud9 Farm, one of the assistants out there, Will, he's a friend of mine. We were sitting there talking, and he's talking about the electroculture he's done. Now, just like it even says in that particular book, and he's one of the subject matter experts. Man, what I can't remember his name. I usually remember the name of authors of books. Somebody's going to ask something.
Yannick Van Doon. Yannick Van Dorn. My bad.
And, dude,
It
that
sounds like
a X-Man character or some. It sounds like a bad guy in one of these Marvel movies, man.
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
Okay, yeah, it sounds like a bad guy, man, but he seems to be doing some good work. But he also even says in the book that, it's not always, you don't always necessarily see a booming response on everything. And Will was telling me that on the potatoes, he did a side by side, and it was over there. I could see it side by side in his potatoes where he did the electroculture. They were, what did he say, 3 times the harvest than the ones that he did without. And then he put just nothing more than a copper ring around each tree with the opening of it facing north. And he said, there's been no bug damage, no nothing, no disease, no pest, no nothing. So I'm waiting to get through that, because with my electrical background, I'm thinking, because in that book, they also suggest even combining techniques. So I'm having to pull the reins back on myself before I get out there and really go full steam ahead on this. And then plus there's other things to consider also. The trees can be an issue if they're too high, whatever the case may be. I'm going to go out there and give this the old college try. And a lot of people seem to be, there's a Sunday group that I'm going to meet with, and there's some people out there that are like subject matter experts on it. So I'm looking forward to contacting them as well. So anyway, with the bees, that's the one thing we're doing differently. Just putting that copper wire in front of the entrance, and supposedly that helps a great deal with pest pressure, although we don't seem to have a whole lot of that. I mean, we run our chickens through our bees at least 2 or 3 times, I'd say in a year, maybe 4 times a year. And they usually take care of whatever pests there are. And honestly, if they're not a strong hive and they don't make it, hey, the motto around here, y'all: get loose or get lost. So if you can't make it, we're not going to baby you. And if we're not going to treat the bees for mites, we're not going to treat them for anything. Either you make it or you make it, you don't. But we did notice, your mom and I noticed that when we were out there getting this honey, man, of course, I'm going out there like I'm going into a mission-oriented protective posture. Like MOP 4 in the Army, man. I got everything taped up, man. I don't get stung, knock on wood, because, I'm not leaving any breaches for them to find their way in. But anyway, these guys were out there. They were sounding even though it was a sunny day and we were sweating buckets out there, they were very, very agitated. And then when you look up in the sky, well, what do you see? When you see those moguls in the sky, they're playing with the frequencies. So these bees were not happy, and I totally get it. So anyway, hopefully we'll go out there tomorrow morning and collect a little bit of pollen. So other things we got going on out here. I was clearing out a spot for these breast birds that were, I got in the brooder right now. They're going to wind up going in the laying flock once they get big enough to kind of fend for themselves. And then I'm going to find a rooster. I'm going to wind up using these guys. I'm going to take the birds I have. Usually the golden rule is every 2 years, you want to try to phase out your birds, put them in a pot. And we got some of them out there still doing pretty good, but a couple of them are getting long in the tooth. Anyway, man, I'm not going to fool around and select out which one's doing what. Look, they're all going in the freezer. And I'm going to replace them with these guys. I'll get a rooster, and then we're going to start producing some. I'm going to give these guys a try on the chicken tractor on steroids. We're going to give it we're going to give it some really good. We're going to get a lot of stuff done here in terms of research. Flip the compost, and that's
real quick.
Yes.
Hey, real quick on the chickens. I think chickens lay a lot longer than like what the books say they lay. Like those chickens that we gave when we moved to North Carolina, those chickens that we gave like my wife's parents, they laid for like a decade. They laid eggs consistently for like a decade.
No, they do. They do. Everything they say in the book, by and large, they're looking at it in terms of production. But honestly, after a couple of years, I'm like, okay, man, I've given you a good life. And, I'll be very, very conscious about how at the same time, I'm also filling the freezer at a time when I need it, because I drink bone broth every day. And these older chickens are always better for your bone broth. Yeah, you can make, I guess, decent broth out of a I don't know, a Cornish cross, let's say. Now, he's only been on the earth for maybe 8 weeks. But these other guys have been on there for years, so they've been able to bioaccumulate a lot of cool stuff in their bones. And in fact, you'll even notice that when you stick them in a crock pot, let's say you're making broth or whatever, you put them in a pot, I usually bust up the bones to get all the marrow into an aqueous form, you know? And you'll find out with those birds, you got to leave that thing in the pot for 2 days before you can even think about breaking the bones. And if you can at all, it's usually on the very tips. So everything about these guys is so much stronger. And I know that it makes much, much better broth too. At least that's what my French friends would tell me. So anyway, flip some compost out there. Got a few dead animals in there. And that's one of the key features in, I think anyway, in making really, really, really solid compost. And I've done a little other experiment, which I'll talk about later on, that I think is going to produce a fungal dominant compost that is even going to be easier than what we've already demonstrated in the past. So I'll tell you how I'm going about it, folks. And if it works out, and so far it's looking very, very good, that's wonderful. Another little thing, still waiting on the test results. I know folks are wondering about that, and you're wondering what is the protocol to heal it. I talked to Neethi, the wife of the environmental engineer who's doing our work out there. She says, look, no doubt about it, you have definitely crossed the finish line. There is nothing detectable that is harmful in that soil out there. It's just because his name is going to be on that report, he's not going to rush it. He's going to take his time, go through it, make sure he dots all the I's, crosses all the T's. And I completely understand that, and I respect it. And they just got back from Alaska, so I'll have results before long. But yes, we have in fact crossed the finish line, and we'll have the testing results out there for anybody that wants to see it when it becomes available. Now, I will also say with a caveat, you will not know the name of the lab that did the testing. And the reason why we have so many sinister and diabolical, so Bill Zegley said a minute ago, when you got 3 names, it sounds like you're a hitman. And yeah, Lee Harvey Oswald, James Earl Ray, you know, or at least they set you up to be one. But these hitmen and women that are in this, I'll say this space out here, they're looking for any possible reason. They've already tried to bribe me. Ain't going to happen. I mean, folks with, you know, kind of life-changing kind of money, ain't going to happen. Yeah, I mean, if you think money, if you think these dead presidents mean something to me, look, go talk to Bongino, go talk to Pam Bondi. I don't know what they did to get those guys to turn coat. Maybe it was money. I don't know, but it ain't working on me. But anyway, we have got to make sure all of the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, because once we put this out there, it's going to be the same thing that happened, just like we did when we revealed that everything around that river the first time was toxic. They didn't go after the people that said, oh, it's all clear. No, they came after us, which is absolutely stinking ridiculous when you get down to brass tacks on this. Look, they're telling you what you want to hear, but you don't question that. We tell you that they're lying to you and got the proof from 3 different sources, and you say, show me the proof. But and that's what I said. The first person that shows me what they did and you got proof of it, then I'll show you what I did. But this time,
the thing about it, the thing about it is that they even produced the results and didn't they give the results out or something? Oh, and the results of those were worse than what you guys found. So that's like saying, like pointing a gun to somebody's head and saying like, oh, don't worry, I don't have a gun. Like they said, they showed the results of the testing, them being worse than yours, and then said, everything is clear. Everything is clean. Don't worry about it. That's the equivalent of what they did.
That's exactly what they did. And here's the funny part about it is that whatever hoople-headed Marchie they had working in that office actually sent results that proved that their results were worse than the ones we reported, but they lied to everybody and said everything was clear, and they're doing it all over again. And meanwhile, there's people floating that river, and I'm trying to hurry up and get these results out because it makes me sick every time I see kids down there. And I'm thinking kids and a lot of the old folks that live there, man, they don't have a choice. And we're going to be working on their place as soon as I can get caught up with some of the stuff I got around here. I plan on working some of these what we're going to focus on Living Soil Foundation is honestly focusing on the old folks and the people that really have just been forgotten about. That's who we're going to worry about. The able-bodied people, when I come up with a protocol, okay, if you want to come over here and do this, yeah, I will show you everything you need to do. But I will not do it for anybody else. After this project we're doing right now, and I got my reasons for that, I will not do it again. And real quick on a side note, hey, Mary Jane, thank you. She says, you do not have to prick the blueberries. Hey, Michelle, I hope you're listening. To freeze dry, just boil water up, dip in the berries, take them out immediately, dip them in ice, and then put microscopic cracks in the skin, and they freeze dry better. Hey, thanks a lot. Hey, you just saved my bacon on that one, because I was like, man, how on earth am I going to do this? Now, if I can blanch them like that, that sounds like it makes sense. Okay. Yeah.
I just took a picture of it for you. I can send the picture to you and Mom.
Yeah. So we'll get that done. Hey, thanks a lot, Mary Jane. But anyway, that's why we got to make sure we dot all the I's and cross all the T's. I was going to get into some of the garbage that's going on right now, because I know a lot of people are disappointed, but I'm not going to spend much time on it. Look, folks, people have been, criticizing me, saying, oh, not everything's a nail. No, look, I get it. But we got flooding in so many doggone places right now, it'll make your head spin. And it's going on right now. It's still going on. If you look at some channels like Into Thin Air on X and a number of others out there, Ariana Masters and a number of others, you see these NextRad radar towers in conjunction with these storms, and it's doing these anomalies that have never been seen before, not in nature. And yes, they do have the power to do this sort of thing. And it's getting crazier. So folks, you got to start speaking up. You got to start talking to folks. I mean, folks are going to rate, think about it. If they raise an eyebrow and think you're crazy, well, it tells you a lot about them. So maybe we ought to just not worry about that sort of thing so much. Anyway, that's one of the big things going on right now. And honestly, the biggest letdown and disappointment has got to be, and I'm sure a lot of you out there equally feel like you've been kicked in the jimmy like I have, is this thing where, they would have been better off to not even mention the whole Epstein thing. But meanwhile, you're telling me that all these young children, these women who are survivors, in fact, because honestly, they chummed the oceans with a lot of the other victims out there. Tom Horn he's passed on now, but Tom Horn did a lot of reporting on this. And of locals of the local islands were like, man, where are all these sharks coming from? Well, be honest with you, man, that's what they've been doing. That's what they were doing. They would murder these kids and then put them in the ocean. And it's so diabolical, it'll just make your head spin. Meanwhile, you do have a few survivors out there that were children. Yes, they were children when this happened. Where's the justice for them? You got people like that sellout Alex Jones telling everybody, well, Trump made a deal with the deep state to what? I thought you were there to get rid of it. Everybody feels the outrage at this point that I have, the contempt that I have, you could cut with a knife. Folks, one of the most diabolical things in this world is to harm a child. And what these people did is so far beyond the pale. And we don't get to know who they are. We don't find, you're telling me none of this exists. I'm just floored. I'm floored by this. And I can't say that I'm completely surprised. I predicted this would happen. As soon as Bongino got in there, and I told you folks over a year, I told you folks in October of last year that Bongino was human garbage. I told you that, and I brought the receipts, and I can tell you why. I won't go through it again now, but I told you back then he was garbage. So when I knew he was on board, I'm like, okay, yep, ain't nothing going to happen here. They need a face in there, but you know what? These people can't be seen anywhere. Anyway, son, what's going on in your world?
Yeah, I'm on that note. I'm so tired of hearing, oh, it's just 5D chess. It's just 5D chess. And I'm so sick and tired of hearing it. I honestly broke down earlier today thinking about this, like praying that everything be sped up, that justice gets, like, at this point, I could completely understand if someone were to burn down this whole country. I would completely understand that. And it seems like a little bit too late too.
Be
Like
mindful
nothing.
here, son. It could
I am.
misunderstood.
I am. I'm not even saying a fraction of what I'm thinking, but it's like this is the only thing that matters. This is a basic requirement for life is to protect your offspring. And we can't get people to stop watching football and basketball and baseball long enough to be pissed off about this to actually do something. Anyway, today harvested potatoes and some tomatoes with the baby. That was fun. She was eating the tomatoes while I was harvesting the potatoes and trying to feed potatoes to the puppy, which will just stink up the whole house. But yeah, where's the missing 375,000 illegal kids? Yeah, where's the 80,000 kids every year of the United States that go missing? Where are they? How many kids get lost in the foster system? How many of those kids that are posted up in the Walmart as you walk in actually are ever found? Because I pay attention to those stickers or those posters, and I haven't seen one taken down. The only time I've ever seen a change in those is whenever they just completely wipe the wall and then post up even more kids that are missing, never to be found again. How many of our local officials are in on this? How many?
Son, I didn't mean to take you off your point. I mean, I wanted to put it up there before it passed on. But look, back to what you were doing, man. I think everybody out there feels generally, if you got a heart, if you got a pulse, they're feeling it and a conscience. And honestly, if they're listening to this podcast, I mean, they're probably already on board. So we're not going to continue to talk about it, at least not right now. But trust me, the boomerang's coming. But as you were out there picking potatoes with the little grandbaby.
Yep. And then I don't know if anybody's seen the video lately, but adjusting the fence around the pigs. I'm intentionally putting the pigs around that one pond because I want them to knock down all the vegetation. I'm going to go in there. The end goal is to go in there and widen the pond. You know how when we dug that pond, we kind of left some like sharp edges as you like going off the pond. There's no like smooth transition other than the opening of the pond where all the water comes in. I'm going to go through and kind of like smooth it out a little bit, maybe expand the pond at all if I can. Also, I want to do like another version of chinampas, like a little bit bigger, and I'll probably only be able to get one finger into the pond, but I want to do it so where like it's not just earth that we cut away from it, but like I'll build like maybe using some like logs from the property, like almost like a container of something, and then fill it with soil and then build a chinampa that way. I think it'd be pretty cool just to show like, because if you look online, you don't see, other than like some animated pictures, or not animated pictures, but some like drawings and stuff, you don't really see like any real life examples of chinampas. So I'm thinking if I can do that with that, that'll be pretty cool. But the pigs are absolutely loving the pond. They look like little swamp puppies in there, and they just got like they look like little alligators. They got their face and their nose just sticking out of the water, just looking around. They got me cracking up. Also planted super late, but also planted a bunch of sweet potatoes just as kind of an experiment to see if they'll work. Like I planted my potatoes that I harvested earlier. I planted those months late and then still got a fantastic harvest. Completely neglected them. Didn't give them any kind of attention. Not that potatoes need much, but neglected the water really. And then the sweet potatoes, I'm going to try that again. And I'm doing two different kinds. One with the intent of growing a bunch of vines that we can eat, our animals can eat, all that type of stuff. And then another version where we're focusing on like trying to grow more sweet potatoes. We'll see if it happens. Like if they make it, I think that's a game changer for a lot of people. Like, especially, I'm thinking like single moms that have kids that don't have much time, but they still want to kind of grow their own food if at all possible. If we can get it so where you focus on the soil biology and then you can neglect the rest, I'm trying to see how high our yields could be using that method. And so far, I haven't really seen much of a dip in production. Some of the potatoes could have been bigger, but I could have also like waited a little bit longer on the potatoes. I harvested them early as new potatoes. And I'm doing that because we're about to head out of town for an extended period of time, and it's either harvest them now and get the sweet potatoes in the ground now, or harvest them later and then really ruin any chance of getting some sweet potatoes in the ground.
Yeah, there's so many different cool experiments you can do out there. Look, I'm not weeding anything, man. I'll just sheet mulch over it. I'll cut it down and sheet mulch over that garden and put in a new one. I'm not, and plus you're going to build the soil even quicker that way. So I'm not, there are certain things, painting and weeding, I am not at all. I'm not the guy for that job. I can't do, for some reason, I can't do either one of those. I could if you wanted to torture a brother, but I mean, that's really not for me. Yeah, Mountainside with Ken and Amy says, is a pew pew the only way to get rid of a wild boar? That'd be the way I get rid of it. Man, that seems weird that you'd have a wild boar where you guys are at, but yeah, if you got one out there, that's what I'd use to take it out, because honestly, there aren't too. If you have dogs out there, they sometimes run them off, but sometimes those dogs get mixed up with those boars, and boy, they could put a hurt on a dog in a bad way. Unless you got those dogs that are specially, I mean, meant for that, boy, it's kind of cool to see them work. I mean, they'll grab a hold of them, but even then, man, those dogs that are specially trained for it, man, they even get, and they're only there holding them until you get up on it and do what you got to do. But at the end of the day, that's how I'd do it. I'd take them out. Yeah, put that meat in the freezer. All right. So Redemption Shield, 10% off with promo code PERMA. Remember, when I do this show, y'all, I am G'd up from the feet up, and I mean grounded. So you know what time it is. Yeah, 10% off with promo code PERMA. Wave Watch. I neglected to wear that and I just got finished telling everybody every time I go to town, I wear that thing. And I didn't. And I regretted it. Anytime I know there's a place that I'm going, which is usually off this property, anytime I go anywhere, I usually have that thing on, and I don't know what I was thinking. I left it behind because you just never know what kind of anxiety that I'm going to come into being around some of these freakazoids. So anyway,
hey, real quick on that Wave Watch, like it does more than like the anxiety and stuff like that. It does way more than that, especially like the newer one that they came out with that's a little bit smaller. Emily's been using it. My wife has been using it every day. But there's like, I mean, it's not disgusting or anything like that, but she has like an ovarian cyst that sometimes is like painful and stuff like that. But there's a specific frequency and setting for that exact scenario. And she's been wearing it constantly, trying to get rid of that cyst. It's not like it's growing. It's not really, it's benign. It's just like sometimes painful, especially when she was pregnant with the baby was kicking it, and that was painful. But like, I highly recommend getting that Wave Watch if you have any kind of chronic ailment at all.
Yeah, first of all, get some sun, but also at the same time, for me, I mean, I talk about the anxiety because that's that and the self-edgiotones are the only things I really use on it or feel the need to use. But yeah, your mom has used it for some pretty bad female issues, man. And it seemed to help her a great deal. So anyway, I believe in that thing big time. Anyway, Billy 100 will get you $100 off of that. Okay, if you want some of the t-shirts Eric's come out with, a lot of people have asked about that. You can go to our website and we got a link to it, and also the stickers from the Homestead Twins. There's a link for both of them at the website. So if anybody's interested in any of that, that's where you can find it. And coming up real soon, July 18th through the 20th, Kentucky Sustainable Living. William's going to be there talking, and there's going to be a number of others out there as well. Homesteaders United Jamboree is coming up August 18th through the 30th. And then later on, I think it's in September, I'm going to be at, I don't have the information on that one quite yet. But anyway, just keep stay tuned. Anyway, that's going to be in Tennessee. And by and large, folks, unless that festival is very, very close to me, I'm not going to be there. So it's going to have to be within 2 hours of my house. Otherwise, I'm just not going to be able to make it, especially with all the things we got going on right now. And we're still playing catch up since the doggone hurricane, folks. We're still playing catch up from that. Just didn't prioritize things right. We were worried about everybody else, and we're just trying to worry about what we got here and try to get caught up. Anyway, good news. No safe amount of processed food exists, study finds, debunking modern myth. Now they go through and they're talking about, like, researchers found that like 0.6 grams of a processed meat raises diabetes chances by 11%, while half of a teaspoon of soda increases it by 8%. I mean, just crazy stuff. I mean, people drink half a teaspoon of soda.
Not
Which,
once ever.
no, not anybody. I mean, who said, hey, let's try half a teaspoon in this study? Because that's real. Yeah, everybody worries about that. But anyway, there's no safe amount of junk food. But let's just be honest here. We live in the United States of amnesia. There is no way, myself included, that all of us are not going to have that time where we're saying, hey, we're going to eat that. I'm just saying all things in moderation, okay? Your body can get we're being attacked from the sky with the radio waves, with the blue light. I mean, you name it, all the way around us, we're being hit. So, I mean, these things have deleterious effects on the body. So we just got to try to find every little hack we possibly can to get rid of it. All right. Barry Tarshis on DMSO. Yes, I just said it. The remarkable safe painkiller Big Pharma doesn't want you to know about. Anyway, I've talked about it. I wanted to bring this up before because this article just popped up there, and I was like, okay, there's no way I'm not going to talk about this. I talked about it a little while ago. Of course, it has all these incredible anti-inflammatory properties. Every sheep we put it on, absolutely fine. I mean, folks, if you got it on your animals, I use it on myself. If you have any, folks, I'm telling you, this stuff works like nothing I've ever seen before. So examine it. You can find it at Tractor Supply or one of your local farm stores. That's where we get it. In fact, we bought like a gallon or a couple of gallon jugs of it. I mean, just to have it in case of whatever jumps off. So look into it and find out. Mike Adams has that new, he calls it Enoch. And it's a, what do you call them things, son? It's kind of like ChatGPT.
It's just an AI. But if you go to Brighteon.ai, it's Brighteon.ai. It's the only thing that you see there. I think you have to put in your email because I've been playing with it and it's pretty cool. So you give it your question, and it helps if you're very specific on your question. But you give it your question, and then it'll email you the response. And there's like a queue, there's a waiting queue and stuff like that. But if you're gonna try it, then I would try it now because he's temporarily like there's a limit on how many questions you can ask per day, just because they're working off their own servers and stuff like that. Like they're limited on how much like traffic they can get. But he's opened that up to maybe unlimited or at least a lot more than the original one was for a short period of time. I can't remember how long it is, but it's in relation to like all the floods that are going on. That was like the reason or something like that. Yeah. So it's a pretty cool, like if you want to ask like honest, like, man, I can't even say the questions that I've asked on here because it's going to get this kicked off.
Yeah, but the cool
you want
thing
to ask it those questions, go to Brighteon.ai.
That's exactly what I was trying to get at with talking about the DMSO. I mean, when it comes to when it comes to medical or health advice or something like that, I would not go to ChatGPT, Grok, or any of these others out there. I would go to the Enoch thing that William just told you about. And I know for a fact that if you put in DMSO, you're going to find an exhaustive list of all the wonderful things that you can do. And man, I am a believer. That stuff works like nothing I've ever seen. I'm looking at this little black and white or brown and white ram. No, it's a little baby down there. Man, there was no way I thought that thing was going to survive. It is literally jumping all over the pasture right now. I've never seen a recovery like this in an animal. I mean, so whether it's on your pets or whatever the case may be, folks, just look into it, examine it. But I would use Enoch as far as a search engine to find out what's going on there. So, vitamin D deficiency. This is the last one. Vitamin D deficiency fuels autoimmune conditions, dysregulating immune function. The reason why I brought that up, I had on, if you haven't listened to it, I did a podcast yesterday. It was a little bit, had to work with him because he's a farmer also, and he's got a lot going on. So the only time we could work it out was about 4:30 my time. So a lot of you may have missed that, but if you listen to the interview that I did with Logan yesterday, we're talking about a lot of this stuff and how most of us are doing it completely backwards when it comes to vitamin D. And I suggested, once again, folks, if you don't have it, get that D-Minder app for your phone, and it'll tell you the pockets, the windows, depending on your latitude. And for those of us in higher altitude, like where we live, yeah, you're going to have a tactical advantage as far as getting vitamin D because you're closer to the sun. And, the further north you are, you're going to have a problem there, So you got these little windows in which you can get that vitamin D. Anyway, I'm not going to go through this entire article, but in a nutshell, look, this is like the immune system's master regulator, okay? That's how they put it in this article. So if you can possibly get over there, get that app, and then try to, get the morning sun like Logan talked about yesterday. I'm talking as it's rising. And then sometime throughout the day, as often as you can, go out there and do what you can. Do what you can to get as much as you possibly can, because I know some people are going to say, well, I supplement it with, look, it's not the same. It's like Dr. Cruz often says, Tina, Tina. There is no alternative. Okay. And then plus all the junk that they put into every single one of, unless you're in extreme examples, unless you're up in Alaska or something like that, wouldn't even consider supplementing it. You'd be better off getting a reptile light. And it kind of, goes on about it in this article. Let me just cover a couple of questions here real quick. Ken and Amy said they started encroaching from Tennessee. They're pretty bad in Newport. Wow, I didn't know that as far as the pigs. Man, I sure hope this is correct. Fed Up is saying Trump's EPA chief Lee Zeldin says they're releasing everything on the geoengineering chemtrails. Yeah, I think you're going where I'm going too, Fed Up. They said the same thing about the Epstein files. They said the same thing about JFK. They say the same thing about the 9/11 files. I know you're probably, there's a little piece of me thinking, man, boy, we could really use some good news. I mean, and if we could put an end to this, but I will eat my hat if they tell us anything substantive concerning geoengineering. It's too big a deal. It is absolutely too big a deal for them to actually put an end to it. Do you know how many billions, maybe even trillions at this point, of money has gone into this to be able to do what they do, to drop these things out there? Because the idea is, well, I can go down a really wide rabbit hole here, but the bottom line is, man, I sure hope that's correct. But
I have a feeling it's going to be the same thing Bobby Kennedy did, where it's like, oh yeah, we've determined that there's minor like climate effects from the jet fuel and stuff like that. That's what I have a feeling they're going to do.
Yeah, exactly. And Dame Wigington told me, and I've talked about it before on this show, Dame Wigington told me personally, he says, watch, about a month and a half from now, they're going to start saying it's in the fuel. And then sure enough, just like clockwork, that's exactly what they started doing. And he told me that before then. Another one here, please have Dr. Group on. He's such a wealth of information. Look, I've tried reaching out to Dr. Group. It is so difficult to get him on any podcast these days. And he said as much in one of his last interviews. I would love to have Dr. Group on, but he's just a hard fish to kind of capture. So I'll keep trying to see what I can come up with.
Here, let me throw him up on the screen for you, because I know you're reading from a distance.
Okay. Sammy Joe says, why do you wear the red glasses? These are blue light blockers. When in the evening, when the sun goes down, okay, let me just put it this way. I got two different kinds. I got yellow and then I got red. The yellow lets in about 60, they block 60% of the blue light. Now, if you're in the midday when the sun's out there, the only time in your life you get blue light in nature is from the sun, and it's during that middle of the day. But that blue light from the sun is also accompanied by the entire spectrum. So it's never one thing by itself, but every time you open up a cell phone or you look on your laptop or do any of these things, you're being bombarded with it. And the powers that shouldn't be know just how harmful these phones, these tablets, these computers, they know how they are. They know. In fact, you can buy, I think Logan brought it up yesterday, you can buy what's called a daylight computer, where it gets rid of all the blue out there. So anyway, when you're looking at blue light in the evening, it is one of the best ways to screw up your circadian biology. So this even though your eyes are just the melanopsin that's in your skin, it's still capturing some of that blue light, but it's at least offset with some positive things that are in here. So if ever you're in the presence of blue light, you want to offset it with a red one as well. So long story short, I wear these to protect my eyes after a certain time. If I'm inside, and it's rare these days, but if I'm inside midday, I'm wearing yellow. But once that sun is no longer producing anything I can get vitamin D from, I switch over to the red lens because it blocks out nearly all of the blue light out there. So yeah, and it'll make a massive difference on your sleep, if provided you do other things. But they have these insidious, real quick, let me just say this. There are so many insidious devices, absolutely pernicious when you think about it. You know, you get up, you go to the bathroom, let's say you, in the middle of the night, you open the refrigerator door. Well, now they no longer use incandescent bulbs. You're being hit with all of this blue light coming from the LEDs that they have in there. And it's done on purpose. Little things like on your coffee pot. You can find out where the blue light is just by putting on your blue light blockers. And then all of a sudden the color of that light changes. You know there's a fair amount of blue in it. So yeah, it's all the way around you. So it takes something to get around it. You know, like in this room, I'm hit with studio lights, but I'm offsetting that studio light with a full spectrum lights that are above me right now. So even though I'm getting hit by the computer, you know, the studio lights, it's being offset by the fact that I do have full spectrum Nera bulbs up in here. So yeah, hopefully that's a blessing to somebody. All right, so we're going to move on. With that said, we're going to go to my man, Eric Sider.
Hey, Eric Sider here with your Pimpcast tip of the day. Today's tip, let your Comfrey grow. This will be obvious to many of you, but useful for those new to the Comfrey game. Patience is paramount in permaculture, but often disregarded in general society. We want everything now. There's a funny bit from a comedian about Amazon Prime. I'm paraphrasing, but basically he's saying, I want it now, Prime now. Place it in my hand as soon as I click the button. And Prime before. Give me what I want before I know I want it. I guarantee there's some psychopathic tech bro drooling over that concept as we speak. In regards to Comfrey, I've just been reminded of the production difference between 1 and 2 year old plants. I was feeling lots of Comfrey envy last year with the size of the leaves on my plants versus some of the massive plants my friends had, thinking it was the soil or not enough water. Then this year, the plants that have been in the ground 2 years are just exploding with growth. Leaves almost the size of my arm, and nothing has changed except the age of the plants themselves. So you can definitely get a harvest of leaves in the first year, and you can even get a harvest of roots if you need to propagate on more plants. But the difference in production you get from a 1 to 2 year old plant is just amazing. So if you can leave those plants in the ground for 2 years, you will definitely be rewarded. Obviously, this is just my experience in a Mediterranean climate, so your results may vary. You can find me on YouTube and Instagram at Eric Sider. If you're in need of permaculture t-shirts or remote permaculture consultation and design, head over to ericsider.com. And for those in the Sacramento area, check out my permaculture community group, permaculturefairoaks.org.
That's my dog laying it down like he always does. So yeah, man, that Comfrey. By the way, if you need any, we got some at the website. It is probably the most useful thing I use around here, whether it's in the compost or whether I'm feeding it to the animals, folks. I'm not overselling it. I'm telling you what we honestly do. I don't need to. Look, it's a self-licking ice cream cone. You buy it once, you never have to buy it again. So it's one of those things where I'm essentially putting myself out of business, and I'm glad for it. All right, y'all. EMP Shield, $50 off with promo code PERMA. A lot of crazy things going on in this world right now, but one of the craziest is a lightning strike, okay? And that's probably one of the most common too. So if things jump off and it blows up anything downstream, they're going to cover you for 25 G's. So you can't beat that. EMP Shield, $50 off with promo code PERMA. And by the way, they got stuff for you name it, your car, your ATV, it doesn't even matter. They got it for everything. Your solar setup, all of it out there. Anyway, $50 off with promo code PERMA. All right, so we're going to get down to brass tacks on this one. Man, I got to be honest with y'all. I've been so bummed out with the awful news, and then here it is. Oh, by the way, we're going to be sending more money to Israel and Ukraine. Meanwhile, grandmas are flipping coins whether or not they're going to take their heart medication. I'm sitting here like, okay, what do I possibly talk about that's relevant to this crowd? And I mean, it was a stupid question because it's what's been on my mind for the last 2 days. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to talk about that. Well, we kind of did anyway, but I'm not going to make it the main topic. I wanted to get into animals that build the soil and how we do that. I know we've talked tangentially, I mean, well, even directly about this, but I want to get down to brass tacks a little bit more on that because, you know, animals are not just for milk and meat, man. They're soil engineers. And you can use the pigness of the pig, the cowness of the cow, as Joel would say, the chickenness of the chicken. You know, if you manage them right, and that's the big if you manage them right, they can build fertility in a way that, son, am I wrong when I say you can't? Building fertility and growth in the system is exponentially larger when you have animal systems in there.
Oh, absolutely. Like Greg Judy, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure it's Greg Judy, has had to replace fences before because he's built so much soil using his cows.
That was Joel.
That was Joel. Okay. Yeah, he's had to replace fences before because the soil is raising and like the fence is, you know, getting shorter as the soil is raising and everything. Like that's a good problem to have. He's replenishing the 20 feet of topsoil that we used to have at a record speed. Like it's one of the fastest grazing animals is one of the fastest ways to build soil. The only two other ways that I know is sheep mulching. And that's faster is sheep mulching and then putting down a bunch of organic matter before the snowpack comes in. Those are the only two ways that I know of that are faster at building soil than grazing your animals correctly. But that, like Dad was saying earlier, that's the caveat is that you have to be grazing correctly in order for you to find any benefit. I don't even know if there's like a break even level with animals. Either you're like losing soil or you're building soil. And it's super easy with the animals. All you have to do is just do what you're already doing and just keep on doing it. Now, there are other techniques and strategies you can use, but yeah, grazing animals is one of the fastest ways to build soil.
Well, I was thinking about that today when I was moving the sheep because now, you know, with my rotation schedule in early spring, they're moving every day. So, you know, before they hit the first paddock, it's probably in early spring when you get that spring flush, man, that grass is kicking. So you may have to move them twice a day sometimes. Not everybody can manage that, but at the very least, they're going to move once a day. And so they're on about they'll come back to the first paddock in about 40 days, okay, during the spring. Then when we get into summer, like right now, these guys are on, I figured it out the other day, and they're actually on this will be about a 58-day or maybe even a 60-day rotation. So basically 2 months before they're back on the same paddock again. It's really simple. When the grass is growing fast, you move them fast. When it's growing slow, you move them slower. Or you can leave them in a spot and let them graze it a little bit deeper than you ordinarily would, but that can be tricky sometimes in the summer because you don't want to eat it down so low that you're baking the microbes in their soil. So it can be a zero-sum game, but it's not difficult. But let's start with, because as William said, I mean, these guys can either build fertility or they can destroy it. But I don't know, in most cases, when you see cow operations all over Texas or wherever you are, people generally leave them they'll say, well, I move my animals, and then you find out, yeah, they move them like 3 or 4 times a year. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking very small paddocks where they eat, poop, pee, leave their fertility behind. They only eat a little bit, and then they move on. And, you know, so many people, it's so counterintuitive for so many people to think, well, look how much grass you're leaving behind. Well, that's not what you're seeing there. You're only seeing what you're seeing it in a reductionistic worldview, and that's not exactly how we look at things. Certainly not in permaculture. So let's talk about the pros of like chickens. Now they're going to scratch and, you know, mix. I mean, they can mix up your compost. They can make compost, your mulch. Obviously great pest control, and they're really good when you put them after your ruminants, especially within 3 days after the ruminants. They're going to break up, let's say, those cow patties, and they're going to bust up the parasite cycle for that animal. And it's not like it crosses over from, let's say, a cow to a chicken. It doesn't cross species unless you're working with the U.S. government. And all of a sudden we have chimeras. Those sorts of things don't typically happen in nature, okay? Plus, they got nitrogen-rich hot manure, but you better watch out, because if you want to talk about, I talked about that rooster that got over here the other day, and I ended up putting him in a pot. Actually, he went in the compost pile. I was going to put him in the pot, but he didn't have, man, I seen more meat on the neck bone. He was one of those guys that was bigger on the feathers department. But anyway, one bird alone will destroy mulch rings like you have never seen in your life. And most people just let their chickens go everywhere. That's not what we do. We never, ever, ever let any birds just go wild, because first thing they're going to do is, just like in a chicken tractor on steroids, they're breaking down that compost pile to eat the biota. Well, they're going to do the very same thing for all the mulch rings around your garden. Now, there are times where you might want to let them in there, but in your orchards generally, man, if they're ever in there, it is like a half a day and very, very supervised. Son, anything you want to add to chickens?
Yeah, with the chickens, especially when they're following your ruminants and stuff. So imagine like a cow. It poops and it's a big pile, right? Well, the chickens will go through there. They'll break up the pest cycle, but they'll also spread that pile out. So that pile of manure's like benefiting a larger area than it typically would. So if you want to maximize the amount of manure coverage, which is like composting, if you want to maximize the amount of manure coverage on your land, then bring chickens in to follow. And it doesn't just apply to cows. It also applies to any other ruminant you might be grazing out there. It applies to pigs and stuff like that. It's just be careful with the chickens and pigs, because if the chicken stays still too long, it's going to be a snack. So, and also keep in mind, like with the free ranging and everything, I see that a lot doing consultations. I'll see a lot of people that just free range their chickens. And if chickens have if they have like a hand, and each one of the fingers is like an ability that the chicken brings to the table, by keeping them stationary and not putting them in a system like chicken tractor on steroids, you're cutting off like 4 fingers of that hand, which like they're way more useful and way more successful if you can move them, control their efforts, like you're directing their efforts to the confines of the fence. Then you'll have 10 times better results than just keeping them either free range, which they're just going to do the like kid at the buffet. They're just going to go to the desserts and all over the place, which is underneath your mulch ring or in your garden. And they're not going to go in and get like the nutritious stuff, like the salad, the meat, stuff like that. So direct the efforts of all of your animals if entirely possible. Now, a cool thing about chickens is if you have to leave for an extended period of time, you can just open up the door and they'll completely provide everything they need for themselves if you let them free range. The only issue is that you're going to now have predation potentially.
Yeah, there's unless you're doing something like, unless you're working on wide acreage and you're bringing your egg mobile behind where your cows have been. Yeah, I can understand you don't necessarily, but most of us aren't operating in that environment. And so nets are, it takes us a little bit longer to do chores than most people out there. It's not, we move everything every single day. And I mean, every single day in a tough mountain environment. So yeah, that's critical. All right. So let's talk about sheep. And by the way, Jack Cruz, I can't believe he did this. Is part of what inspired this podcast today. Is he put this thing on there? I didn't know they did this, but you talk about decentralized fertilization, man. These hippos, they wag their tail while they're pooping, and it's like slinging the poop everywhere. I didn't even know they did that. And it's like, good night, man. I mean, they're spreading it all around, and it's decentralized fertilization. That's exactly what's happening. Whereas cows and stuff don't do that, the chickens will do that for them, is basically what William's saying. Okay, so you got sheep out there. Man, I'd love to have a hippo, man. But
no, you don't.
Yeah,
no, you don't.
More people than anybody in Africa, though. Yeah, No, I'd
And
love to have a hippo like Ellie Mae had on the Clampets or whatever, something that wouldn't kill anybody. A domestic.
have you heard about what's going on in Colombia with Pablo Escobar's hippos?
No.
They have a full like herd of hippos now. He originally had like a zoo or whatever, and they had like just a couple of hippos. Well, they started breeding, and apparently Colombia's environment is perfect for hippos because they're taking off over there and they're ruining all kinds of crops. They're ruining waterways. Like they're having to like. I think there's going to be like a hunting season on these hippos because they're reproducing like crazy and they're destroying everything.
Wow, who knew? Oh man, yeah, I would imagine they'd love a place like that. Good night. Who knew you go to hippo environment over there? Yeah, I ain't trying to get mixed up with a hippo, man. You see the teeth on those guys. Anyway, sheep. So these are more of your silent fertilizers, man. Well, they're going to drop the manure a little more evenly. And by the way, folks, with all your ruminants, you're going to see the highest manure load wherever the water is. That's just known. I mean, that's where you're going to see the highest, wherever they sleep or wherever you have the water, that's where they're going to have the highest manure load. I mean, they're light footed and they're perfect for these mountains because I don't have to worry about compaction like you would with a cow. Great for orchards because that's where we're using them. In fact, we're going to have them in a part of the orchard that they've never been before. Now it's going to require a lot of work out of us. But anyway, got to watch out, man, because if you don't raise them right, you're going to have parasite problems. So that helps a little bit by getting those hair sheep that are a little more adapted to an environment like this. And you got to keep them moving. Nothing. I mean, even in the worst circumstances, there are times where, like in the winter months, they may stay in a paddock, but never more than 3 days, ever. So that's one thing to consider there. Now, some of your cattle, William was kind of talking about it a minute ago. These are kind of your heavy lifters. I mean, they're eating a lot of grass. They're going to poop a lot. But you're going to see these giant patties, and that's where you could spread it out because they're not exactly hippos. We're not raising hippos up in these mountains or anywhere you may live. I mean, nobody I know of owns any hippos. I don't know any drug dealers. So at least not anymore. Anyway, folks, I wasn't into drugs. I'm just saying everybody I grew up with was a drug dealer back in the day. But anyway, they do a good job of trampling organic matter, but even sheep can do, depending on their on the density of that you have out there, they can do a lot of trampling too. It mimics nature. They can do that just like the sheep, but you better watch out. I mean, if you get them out there, if you have them in wet ground, they will do compaction like nothing you've ever seen before, especially if you got them out there for an extended period of time. So when you overgraze, look, you're on the fast track to desertification. I can never say that word right. But yeah, and then plus you always want to have your ruminants, if at all possible. You can have your chickens are going to go in there. They're going to break up that parasite cycle. So that's another good way of doing it too. Anything to add on the cattle, son?
Well, the sheep, one quick note on the sheep is that they also have like their hooves are designed in a way where they actually like massage the soil. They create very little compaction with your sheep. Now the cows, some people, I've been to some like I go to people's farms and homesteads all the time. It's my main source of income is consulting for people. Now in those trips, one thing that I've seen or I've witnessed pretty frequently is that people on smaller acreage are usually disappointed about how many animals are going to fit on their property. They generally, because they are new to this and there's no, shame on them or anything. But they usually overestimate how many animals they can put on a particular piece of property. Now with your cows, let's say, I have like 20 acres, right? And it's not very good forage. It's like mostly weeds, a lot of briars, a lot of thorns, thistles, not very much grass and stuff. So I might start off with a handful of sheep and a single steer maybe. Now, as I graze correctly, if I'm grazing correctly, I can increase the forage growth 300% per season that I graze correctly. So at first, I might only be able to fit one cow. But as time goes on and as the forage density increases, I can increase my stocking density, which is the number of animals you have in your paddock. I can increase my stocking density as time goes on. So if you're in that position where you're like, man, I don't have like enough forage, or I'm not able to house as many animals as I was hoping to, then just graze correctly, give us some time, and then you will have to increase your numbers as time goes on. Like you guys are in that position right now, where at first there was barely enough forage because of the overgrazing of the cows the previous owners had on that land. But as you've grazed correctly, then you get to a point where like 15 sheep ain't enough anymore. You're having to increase your numbers.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. Let's go to the pigs. That's nature's bulldozers. I can't remember, like Joel Salatin calls them 4-wheel drives. Look, just like William said, this place was so overgrazed, so covered up with multiflora rows and all these other things. Look, if you want to get rid of it, put some pig food on top, something that they want, or put some fermented corn down there. They will get rid of it. It won't be there long. So, yeah, so they're great at rooting and breaking up some incredible soil, making the soil a little bit more. It's tricky. It's not that tricky though. If you go out there with a feeder, let's say it's a 1/2 ton or a 1 ton feeder, and let's say that's what Joel uses, and this is brilliant, honestly, how he came up with this. It's a brilliant barometer in knowing when to move your pigs. Now, as they're smaller, it's not going to be like a ruminant for the most part. When a pig is smaller, they're going to move less frequently. As they grow, obviously, as they get closer to processing, you're going to be moving them a lot more frequently. So your barometer and how to know when to move the pigs, first of all, we're going to put them in the worst place possible because they are going to improve it. You don't even want to know, folks, what they've done to the side of this mountain will absolutely floor you. Now, they're going to make divots out there, going to make holes. They're going to do what pigs do. They're going to root. They're going to do all those things, and they're going to create a high degree of disturbance depending on how long you leave them there. But your feeder is your barometer if you raise them that way. So in other words, when that feeder runs out, it's time to move them. Really that simple. When the feeder runs out, that's how you know that they have massaged the landscape long enough and they need to move on. Now, as you understand what that is, and you raise pigs the way I do, where I use food scraps from restaurants, organic food scraps and stuff like that to feed mine, your grazer's eye is going to come in, but that's with experience. I mean, I don't necessarily say start out that way. Or there are ways also where you can raise these guys in a smaller place, like Jason from Sow the Land raised one in a carport, raised 2 of them actually in a carport in a very small place. And he made compost. All you do is just like you do with the chicken tractor on steroids or a deep bedding chicken method. You just add more bedding whenever you need to, which, depending on the size of the pigs, that could be every day. It could be every other day. But you add more and more wood chips, and the pigs are going to get it done for you. But yeah, they will overdo it if you don't keep them moving. So that's your barometer. As you understand what you're doing, then you can change over to other methods. But that's the big one right there. Goats. Yeah, we're getting long in the tooth on this podcast, so I'm going to jump on over to goats real quick. Yeah, they're great for doing shrubs and trees, but you got a management issue. I'm not a big fan of goats. So not great soil builders directly,
Yeah, they are in one specific manner. So you buy goats, you get pissed off at them, you're tired of them trying to kill themselves and jump in the fence, and then you shoot them, and then you put them in your compost pile, and they act as the animal additive to your compost pile.
And I'm with that. Okay, so I'll just kind of move on to ducks and goats and birds. Yeah, they're your browsing and cleanup crew. And once again, you got to keep them moving, but you got to watch out, man. These guys will knock out your seedlings. Anything you eat, these ducks eat too. So they're going to be after it. And don't forget the underground workforce. And I'm just going to specifically talk about the worms. Now, I could do a whole show on this one alone, but we don't necessarily need to do that. But just talk, they're breaking down that organic matter, man. They're creating castings. Everything a worm touch, everything that comes out of a worm is improved immeasurably. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy how they operate. They will aerate the soil. When we got here, y'all, they had so much dewormer because of that. Way too many cows out here. You couldn't find a worm anywhere, and this ground was as hard as woodpecker lips. Now it's a whole different ball of game. I mean, you can't put a spade in the soil without coming out with some worms. So those are your top predators. If I see worms, what does that tell you, son?
That everything else is present. You have the bacteria, you have the fungi, you have the nematodes, the protozoa, the macro or microarthropods. Yeah, the worms are the top dog. Now, on the same note, and I've mentioned this before in other videos, I have a theory that if you don't have worms but you have ants, ants are acting as like the pioneer species for your soil. So I've noticed like ants survive in some pretty crappy soil, and they turn the soil into what looks like castings. They look like they have those little glued like little crumb structures around their thing. So I know ants are super annoying to deal with, especially when you kneel down them and you didn't realize it. But try not to dump anything into the soil trying to get rid of ants. Instead, try to change the biology, because I had a bunch of ants in my raised beds over at the demonstration site until I started changing the biology, and now I can freely kneel down in any of the beds and not have to worry about any ants, or at least not a whole freaking ant pile. Like it'll be one or two and stuff, but that's about it.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It seems as if when you improve the biology there, when it gets in a positive note, these guys seem less interested. So maybe they're only there because the soil needs something, folks. So yeah, worst thing you can do is go out there and get some, ant killer and stuff like that. So look, I'm going to cover this last one. I've never, and I had to bring up at least one animal. I know everybody loves them. Who doesn't love a horse? But I've never seen anybody that had horses that didn't have compacted soil. I've never seen anybody that had horses, donkeys that didn't have seriously compacted soil. I know that there are people doing it right out there. I've just never seen it, not personally.
I have once, and it was at Jeff Lawton's, and he used the horses to graze areas that were supposed to be compacted, like his laneway system. He would use the horses to graze the part that you would drive on, and they were really good at cleaning up fences, because they'll like lean down and then get underneath the electric fence and everything.
Now, in a case like that where you want it compacted, absolutely, I totally get that. But by and large, everybody loves horses, but the utility of these guys, now, there's no reason you can't run your horses just like Greg Judy used to do. There's no reason you can't run your horses along with the cattle. I mean, they can graze right alongside them, but nobody does it. Nobody does it that way.
It kind of depends on the. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Sorry. It kind of depends on the temperament of the horse too, because Jeff was doing that for a period of time until one of the horses kicked the head in on a calf. It hated the calves. So depending on the temperament, you can include them in with your cows.
Yeah, well, obviously, yeah, you don't want some monster out there. And a lot of times these horses behave the way they're treated. So, yeah, I guess I'm not too awful shocked about that. But anyway, that's one of the animals that can provide some serious compaction in maybe an awful way if you're not careful. But I have yet to see anybody that has horses that doesn't have the worst soil ever, and they have to rely entirely on inputs, even though you could very well graze these guys in the same environment that you do everything else. And in fact, it's and you know what? I don't know of anybody that has horses that's not doing a whole lot of worming too. So yeah, so I mean that's something to consider as well. Well, folks, I mean, anything else you want to add to all this, son?
The key to all of this is keeping your animals moving at the appropriate rate. Like you can build soil with any of your animals. You just have to keep them moving. Also, I want to give a shout out to Fed Up. Dude, you've been having me crack up this whole time in the comments. He's been cracking jokes left and right. Yeah. So shout out to Fed Up. But yeah, the key to it, keep your animals moving.
And don't get too many animals. That's like the number one of the biggest problems we see out there too. Is you get out there, you get this place, you heard an Alan Jackson song, you're going country the whole 9 yards. I get it. Everybody's made that mistake, but you're better off having an animal undergrazed and then having to go back behind them with a weed eater than having them overgrazed, because you're only going to go backwards. And you're going to see more of the awful things that you don't necessarily want to see out there. So just keep that stuff in mind. All right, y'all. It's been a joy to be able to be on here with y'all. Until next time, look, y'all, it's a crazy world. Stay alert.
Stay alive.
man or in nature. Let the knowledge ring. With roots that run deep. Wisdom from soul. Permaculture dream. Let the ideas unfold. I'm grooving with the truth, truth, truth. Feeling nature's groove, groove, groove. Who's got the answers? All we need to do. Listen to the earth, they got us through. Let the seeds of change, watch the world spin. From the smallest sprout to harmony begin. In the cycle of life, where the magic's alive.